thanks everyone who is joining us from the Dominican Republic and from India. It's 7 a.m. in the morning in Delhi, 9:30 p.m. in Santo Domingo. I know that the timings we have chosen are not the most usual ones, but we had to find a solution to have both sides of the world connected at the same time. And, anyways, this event is being recorded so it can be shared and viewed later by anyone interested. This conversation between Aradhana Seth from India and Maurice Sánchez from the Dominican Republic is part of the initiatives of our embassy to create meaningful conversations between cultural practitioners from both countries. So far, because of the circumstances, we have been using this virtual space, which sometimes give us a hard time, but we hope that we can soon start having in-person exchanges and exhibitions. I would like to start by thanking Aradhana and Maurice for having accepted with enthusiasm the proposal. I would like to thank also Lola Padonkar, who is connected, for having introduced us to Aradhana Seth. And I would like to make a special, very special thanks to Ana Ferran, First Secretary in our embassy, who has managed to solve the glitch right now with Zoom. And she has done really an amazing work of coordinating between Maurice and Aradhana. And she has stitched the pieces of the presentation you're going to see in a couple of minutes. Putting together this conversation has really been a great pleasure for many reasons. And I'm not saying this because I want to sound diplomatic, because this is what diplomats says, because this is what is expected for me as an ambassador to say, or because Maurice is an old friend and Aradhana has recently become a friend too. I really meant it, and this for two reasons. The first reason is that I have seen the conversation take shape between Maurice and Aradhana over the weeks, and I have seen how both of them, while looking at their images, have been thinking about what those images say to us. Maurice and Aradhana are, of course, not meeting today for the first time. Their dialogue has been prepared over a couple of sessions, and what they're sharing with us are the first set of reflections that putting their work together side by side has triggered. So what we will hear today is a kind of work in progress that can still evolve in other directions. The second reason why I'm excited about this event is because both Maurice and Aradhana are great artists and creative professionals, and I feel privileged to be able to work with them and to have the opportunity to show their work together. I'm not going to go into the details of their bios, which we have shared with all of you, and I just want to highlight two common elements of their respective paths. Both of them have managed to push forward a commercial creative practice and an artistic one at the same time. Aradhana has worked in the fields of movies with directors such as Deepa Mehta and Wes Anderson, while Maurice has led many successful advertisement campaigns. In parallel, they have developed their artistic work and have established themselves as acute observers of the everyday life that surrounds them, with a particular interest in the diverse manifestations of autochthonous art and design. The other element I want to highlight is that both Aradhana and Maurice have created throughout the years an impressive photographic archives of local forms of advertisement and typography. They have been documenting what we have called tonight, for the sake of simplicity, vernacular graphic design for extended periods of time. In doing so, they have gathered an amazing quantity of images, and whatever they show in their Instagram accounts, in printed publication, or in talks like tonight, will always just be the tip of the iceberg. And I'm sure that those are records that researchers will sooner or later be using to understand the moment or the past decades in Dominican Republic and in India. As you can see, I'm comparing Maurice and Aradhana, and during this dialogue, they will also compare images from their collections. Of course, I am aware, they are aware that the art of comparison is a tricky one, especially when we talk about India and the so-called Western Hemisphere. Yesterday, I was reading again Vislumbres de la India by Octavio Paz, which is probably one of the most famous books that has engaged in the exercise of looking at India through the lens of Latin America and in particular of Mexico. And it's quite interesting because in one page, Paz is very categoric and writes that everything separates India and Mexico. And when you read that line, Paz really seems convinced that India and Mexico are two realities with absolutely no points of connections. But if you go on reading the book a few pages later, the same Octavio Paz softened and changed his point of view and start enumerating different commonalities. He starts by the food. He mentioned mangoes, chiku, which is in Dominican Republic, zapote, chile, el picante. And what I find interesting in Octavio Paz as a point of entry for this dialogue is the oscillation between the ideas that we are completely disconnected from each other because of geography, and that we are at the same time, in many aspects, very familiar. When we look at vernacular graphic design from Dominican Republic and India, we are immediately stricken by what is common in visual terms, and we are really intrigued by how these similarities exist despite the distance. But then a few images later, like past a few pages later, when we look into details, when we think about how things and people are portrayed in these forms of art in both sides of the world, we start to feel again that both sides are not only thousands of miles away, but also in very different mind spaces. I will not say more in order not to spoil the presentation. This is just a little teaser. And I will immediately ask Aradhana and Maurice to start by sharing with us a few words about how they got interest in vernacular graphic design. Why do they find this form of art important and worth being documented? And then we will move with them with their images and their words in what I see as a fabulous zones that they have created with the help of hundreds of anonymous painters, a zone that is located right now in Zoom, but in reality somewhere between the Dominican Republic and India. So Aradhana, Maurice, welcome, and you have the floor. I don't know who will start. That's up to you to decide it.
Ladies first.
Ooh, okay. So I've been working in the area of cinema, and through that I started spending a lot of time in libraries looking at old newspapers, because I always felt that the advertising in the papers when you're doing a period film is relevant because it gives you a huge indication of the time that you're living in. And simultaneously, I began looking around me at the streets and working closely with the painters to recreate the signs that existed at the time that the film is being set on the walls where we were shooting the film. And so my entry point, I think, was like some 20 years ago or 25 years ago, when we started to examine what's going on and recreate what existed.
I also started like 25 years ago documenting this phenomena. I started out of an interest in graphic design and typography, especially. And at that time, it was really beginning to be explored also in the United States. So I just looked around and found what I had here and found it to be unique and have a special, way of telling things, like a very, what I think it's a very Dominican thing. Lately, or later, I kept on it, not that much because of an interest in graphic design or typography, but I think in some way that we're like writing ourselves in those walls. Like it's like those cave paintings. Like if someone came and just looked at those walls, they will see what we do and what we like and how we think. I think somehow it's more sincere, a more sincere form of advertising. Like it's really funny, it's really It has no boundaries, it has no rules, and I think it's really interesting to see it in that way, like the way it portrays us.
Yeah, the perspective is amazing because it's a perspective of the most important thing is often the smallest thing. It's like really kind of skewered the perspective of these paintings in many cases. And some of them are very realistic, but many have their own shape and form, which is really honest.
Yeah, as you will see the presentation, we tried to put together a set of images according to some themes. So first there's food and drinks. This one, the one on the left, I really like the way, like if someone gets to imagine the Dominican Republic, it will see like a tropical island full of fruit, people eating fruit everywhere, but it's really not like that, not at least on the most urban areas. And then there's this thing with humor too. Like you will find fruit portrayed in a lot of colmados, cafeterias, and places to eat, and not really having like natural juices or any fruit there. And I really like the sense of humor, like the way, for example, this watermelon is bitten, shown like in a still life, but with a bite taken off it.
I find that this image of the juice stall, it's a fruity and veggie image of a juice stall, is kind of ubiquitous to any time that you see a juice stall in India and there's a hand-painted graphic. It looks similar to this. So if you saw this out of context on the street somewhere, you would be like, oh, there's a juice stall there, because the image immediately takes you to that point. And they've gathered all the fruits from across India or different seasons and put it into this kind of open vessel. So it was and also all the fruits that are organically grown here, like the mango and the ananas. They came from different places, but they are very sort of typical of Indian fruit.
On this image, you'll have like the one important thing is that these signs and these artists compete like for commercial work, so they have to make their work more appealing, and especially food, and that's something kind of hard to do when you paint food, not when you photograph food, which they compete with those signs too. So this artist in particular is one I really like. It's one I'm actually working on a documentary on him. And he uses this really bright, beautiful colors. So here's like this Dominican staple food with rice, beans, plantains, salad, in this case, chicken, and sometimes it's just meat, avocados, and then those juices with these really nice colors against the background with yellow, with pink. And I think he does a really good job at painting depicting food and making it look, like something appealing. It's kind of like a cartoonish way of painting, but it really looks appealing, fresh, colorful. It makes you just want to go and see what's there.
And we have here in India the thali, which is the vessel or the plate in which you eat. And it's often, the meal is called a thali, which is served in that plate, stainless steel format. And the visual here is of the thali with a very everyday meal that is offered on the street at every stall, where you can just like step out of your office and go and eat a quick thali. And on the right hand corner, there is the yogurt milk drink, which is the lassi, which goes with the meal, which is also kind of cooling in the hot summer months. So that we thought it would be interesting to show the actual plate and the everyday meal that is eaten in both countries. So here is a place that makes basically sells egg and fish and chicken, and it's a roadside stall which is has these parallel economies going on. And the fish is, there are many fishes. This is in Goa, in the western part of India, which is where near the water, and where they draw the most beautiful fish graphics. And so I thought it would be interesting to introduce the fact that there's a fish and egg and chicken stall all in one, and this is a selling of the meat, the raw fish.
We found that also interesting, the way they, on the Dominican side, the way we portray food, especially animals, is really different. Like we don't do them like if they were alive or something. We show them chopped up and stuff. So this fish in particular is from the same painter as before. The one interesting thing is this is breakfast. So he's showing like eggs and ham, and then like a fish soup, which is a hangover meal, a hangover breakfast. And the way he lets you know with the face of the fish that the fish is dead, it's kind of, like, I don't know, he portrays other stuff, like really fun stuff, but this is like kind of a sad image of that fish.
Yeah, and in comparison, this is like this beautiful fish, even though it's going to the slaughter, it's going to get eaten, but it kind of is visually beautiful. So this is a kind of birthday cake and pizza place that is a combination of what is considered food from another part of the world. So the depiction of it is very kind of basic in a sense, because it's just like showing a kind of birthday muffin and a pizza with almost like just a bit of white, no tomato, nothing, as their graphic. Because I think the guy who's painting it is not really familiar with the food that is being eaten, except that he's probably been shown one bit of cake and a pizza. So it's very unfamiliar to him. And so he's also painted it in a slightly unfamiliar way.
On the other side, we have fried food, in this case, empanadas, like samosas. So this is completely the opposite. This is like one basic staple of Dominican food. It's something we find in every corner. It's something we find everywhere. And I really like the detail in which this guy painted this empanada with the crackling, and then like the way he did the ketchup and mayonnaise is amazing. It looks like almost like an anatomical drawing or something, like a system of ketchup and mayonnaise. It's really a really detailed image that goes to, as I said before, it has to move you. It has to make you go buy the empanada there against some other places that are really close by. So this is a really well depicted and detailed empanada. And as we told a little bit earlier, humor comes across in a lot of these paintings by Dominican commercial artists. And humor, it has like a way sometimes of being more close to Black humor, and sometimes just being, like telling it straight. So this sign is really, it's like a cruel depiction of a chicken stand, and the guy, he's like running with a dead chicken in his hand, a knife, a really big knife in the other, and like running, two live chickens are running away from him, and he says, as you come, Oscar goes killing. It's weird to put it that way, but it's just straight. It's there with humor, but it's really, like a really violent picture of animals running away from a guy who just killed another animal, and he's just, like, you just come and he kills one for you. And it's really, it's something you won't find in a lot of places.
And on the flip, Maurice and I were talking that this is also a slaughterhouse where they're going to kill the chickens. The left is in Hindi and the right is in Urdu. And they are showing the chickens kind of in all their glory and beauty. And we don't want to face the violence of what is going on. And very often you see the entire creature, even though it's actually going to be slaughtered. And there is a kind of shying away from the previous image, which is chasing and humorous and kind of killing the chicken, whereas here we're just showing it and we're being kind of ahimsa about it, pretending it doesn't exist, but it does. So the graphics are always like this for us, that we show the beauty of the beast.
This image is it's another example of what we were talking. This is a fish stall, a fish market, and the Dominican side, you know, it's all chopped up. It's just like a head floating against the background, the tail floating. This guy is close to Santo Domingo, and he always does this. He always shows like parts of fish, like just chopped up.
And this guy is paints in Delhi, and he always shows this kind of slightly detailed version of the fish scales and the way that the fish is feeling in the world, even though the fish is just about to be eaten. It's at a restaurant where they serve fish. So here it's a bit similar to the last one, where we are showing this almost sheep pig-like idea of the pig, and showing that it's available here, as opposed to, again, the creature being slaughtered. This is a very, very basic image, and it's very often the case that you see a very basic image like this, which is obviously drawn in quite a rudimentary style to show the sale of items or animals or any kind of thing, done on a one color palette, really cheaply done, so that it kind of just indicates what is available.
And on the other side, we have, against the stuff that we saw earlier, you have this really relaxed and happy pig depicted on the wall. And then on the other side, you know, like just reality against the paintings. So they advertise the meat in one way, and then you have to come to check the reality of it. Like the guy is, you know, cutting in half with a handsaw and stuff against this just really happy pig on the wall.
So in India, we don't normally show a lot of booze advertising, alcohol in general. It's not, except when it's done at a booze shop, at a wine shop. This one was at a little bar, and it's sort of indicating the coconut, and it's feni, which is available also in the western part where there are coconut trees. And so this kind of glass is like a coconut without saying it's a coconut, and the bottle is showing the feni bottle interestingly perspectived inside without actually saying what it is, but you know immediately that it's a coconut feni bar. So the graphic imaging in that very rudimentary style indicates to you without even a word of what it is.
On the other side, we have alcohol shown in every block, several. We have those Presidente ads on every colmado, and they're like a really nice story, because they're not paid by the brand. They're paid by the owner of the colmado, and they have, you know, like bottles of Presidente, from rockets to waterfalls to whatever. And in this case, they have it in the same place. Like they sell coconuts, and in that colmado, so they mix the two things, like the presidente going inside a coconut for people to drink. They really do really creative stuff with presidente here, but it's something that the brand has never acknowledged it, and they never taken part of it, and it's kind of weird, but they do really amazing stuff with those presidente stories, and every colmado is something that they compete on. Like every colmado wants to have a presidente mural that's better than the other one, and they do really great stuff there. But we're really used to having booths, and as we will see later, even sex and a lot of stuff depicted in murals, and that are shown in every block, and every are there for everyone to see.
And we are always just alluding to it.
As we will see now.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't show fun exactly in the same way that you show fun. We're quite shy about showing fun, except in specific places. So here there are lots of kind of pool parlors and people who sell pool tables, but we always just show it in a very realistic, this is what you see is what you get kind of way. It's always either the pool table or the balls. It's never beyond showing the functional nature of what is available or for sale or on offer, as opposed to your delicious ones, Maurice.
Yeah, when we talk about fun, and mostly for everyone I know, like fun in the Dominican Republic is synonymous with alcohol. Like there's no fun without alcohol. And then, for example, for this place, like a pool place, a place to play pool, they portray women drinking almost naked and playing pool. And one of the questions that arose from this is, it is usual for women to play, and yeah, they play, but they're mainly displaying women outside just to make it attractive for men. And I have a lot of those places paintings, and it's always just women playing, women in bathing suits, women in bikinis, women having drinks, and it's because of that. It's just to attract men and to speak to men in that way. And there's always booze around. It's like dominoes, like no one plays dominoes drinking juice. There's always alcohol in the middle.
Yeah, I was asking Maurice about it. I was like, are the women playing pool or is it just an attractive element? And he's like, exactly that.
Yeah.
So when we show men and women in the painted sign, which has changed now with obviously the more vinylization, you see that more often. But any time you see a painted sign or a painted wall, if you show a man and woman together like this, it's always something specific. So this is for the circus. It's on the outer walls of a makeshift circus that set up in towns, and they bring with them their very beautifully painted walls or tin walls. The medium mostly in India of all the signs are either on metal or on concrete walls. And here it's these metal walls that come up in smaller towns and bigger towns with the showing of the man and woman in a closer situation is often for an event like the circus.
And on the other hand, this is the kind of images that are found in colmados, found in places, not hidden away, not places that only open at night. Like you can find this everywhere. It's talking about Dominican fun, music, dancing, alcohol is always there. And this image in particular is very, unique because of the perspective, the way the girl had with the lips. And it's really a shy image for some stuff I've seen also. Like next to it, we won't show it, but there was a picture of a, like, I don't know, like there's a guy, a bucket, and a horse, and that's all I can tell you. And it says like, you know, like for those who know, and it's really out there in the open, you know, for everyone to see. It's really funny. This is another example of, you know, portraying fun. This is for an ice cream shop versus the other one. Like there's again women on the, for advertising ice cream against what would be normal for that, like attracting children to it.
We thought this would be an interesting comparison because here, whenever you want to portray ice creams or ice cream or advertising ice cream, it's the maximum you will come is in some animal form rather than, or if it's a human being, it's very, very simplistic. It's like a boy eating an ice cream or biting into an ice cream. I don't think there is ever an advertising on a painted image which is similar to the one. So this is the idea of fun here, is like a morph of a penguin and the cold climbs eating ice cream.
This is again, you go first, sorry.
This again we thought would be interesting because the color tonality of both of this is showing snow and coolness and a kind of fun environment, but obviously one is like a snow park, which is almost a rarity here. And the way to bring people in is to bring in the snowman, which is quite unusual because most people in India don't build snowmen except if they live up in the north in the mountains. So the tonality and the vibe is from what they've seen on the kids have seen on the internet to bring them into the snow park. And the coloration is very similar in both cases.
Our version of the snowman is the frosted presidente, the vestida de novia. And again, here's woman in this case, like she's telling the guys like, hey, you take me to the river, to La Toma, and she's with two frosted presidente bottles. Mm. So it's women for ice cream, women for presidente, women for pool, and on and on and on and on for chicken, for whatever.
I like also the way that they've done the snow park, which is very snowy. It's kind of like a cliche way of doing snow. The font guy has done the kind of ice on the snow park, and he lives in a tropical place, the painter of this. So he's probably like doing this from his visual referencing rather than from reality.
We'll go now to fashion and style. Here we found this to be a very cool comparison because Dominicans are obsessed with brands. Like everywhere you see something depicting fashion or depicting clothing, it has to have a brand. And Nike is obviously one of them. So they have, this is the same image, it's a flip-flop, but on the Dominican side, you will have always the branded thing. You'll have it with Nike, with Adidas, with Supreme, even with whatever, but there's an obsession with brands in particular.
So these blue and white flip-flops are omnipresent in India. There's a company called Bata that it became kind of like the Hawaii chappal, and many people, many companies, local companies have taken off that Bata Czech Indian company, Czech Canadian Indian company. And these flip-flops are everywhere. They're all localized, unbranded, branded, but locally branded. Whereas I feel like in the Dominican Republic, it's always a global brand. And we are now slowly going towards that. But that now appears in the form of more of a kind of stickered sign or a light box or a backlit footwear would be the way that we would go with the global brands here, more than with the kind of wall painting. The global brands haven't got into wall painting to that extent. It's always a more kind of localized brand that does the wall painting. So this is obviously clear what it's showing. We have a lot of men's underwear advertisement all over, especially in smaller towns. So in the capital as well, in the 4 metros as well, and in the capital, but across the countryside, you see a lot of this jangya banyan, which is like Western underwear that everybody wears, advertised across the wall. Sometimes just the Western underwear, sometimes a man in the Western underwear, sometimes a man pulling off the West. And all of this is again kind of very visually graphicized and locally grown and even unbranded. Even though there's probably a brand behind it and everybody probably knows that this visual is for like VIP.
And here on the other side, we have again the brand, the CK, the Calvin Klein, and mostly with underwear. We in the Dominican Republic showing with a model, like with someone wearing it. Never, almost never, like just like a product, but something that you wear, that you have. If it's a guy, it's showing muscles. If it's a woman, it's always a sexy image, and always with a brand. This is when we got to see images of beauty salons, beauty parlors. There's a lot of stuff that's interesting. I really like always those nails places, because they show so different designs on nails and stuff. It's always really, really cool to look at. And then when you go into the hair salon, you will find a different story. Like always, on most places, you'll have like light-skinned people shown, even for hands, for hair, or for whatever. It's always mostly white people shown in the Dominican Republic. And that's beginning to change, I guess.
And here in India, you always also try and show light skin. This is the idea of light skin, fair and lovely, and straight hair. That's constant. It will come up later again, that she's obviously got wavy hair, but they're trying hard to show her have long straightening hair. What is interesting in this one is that it shows Indian clothing. So sometimes you see that the depiction of the westernized person is the one who's looking, the idea of the going with a t-shirt and looking like you have straight hair, but it's going across the board now, and everybody in every small town is looking for the same kind of beauty parlor, straightening, lightening. It's changing a bit now, thankfully, but this is always the visual rendition of it, this kind of pinkish, whitish face, rather than a kind of dark-skinned person.
We will look now at the body. Braces are a phenomenon in the Dominican Republic. Like, they become so popular. You have people putting braces on other people in a plastic chair on a corner in front of a colmado. You will see advertisement for them everywhere. So it's really kind of like this aspirational image. Like, even if there's nothing that you want, it's something put more out of fashion than out of necessity or trying to fix something. Is more trying to look like something, and they're everywhere now. Like, you see a lot of advertising for braces. And so this is like an object of desire, like to have a mouth like that.
And here it's a doctor's, a dentist's office, and it's very much a functional way of looking at it, to have fresh teeth and clean teeth, and that your teeth can be repaired well. It is slowly also shifting towards the idea of being very aware of the body. So it's going from the kind of functionality to now getting a bit glossized in the teeth area. But this is back to like just a doctor's office being advertising the teeth like a dentist.
Yeah, braces here are more like a fashion thing now, I guess.
But why is that? Is that because it's meant to look, it makes you look cool?
No, it's because it's supposed to be expensive. So a lot of people didn't have them before, and now they, some people, they just put it for decoration. They just stick the thing in their teeth.
Okay.
It's not working at all. It's just there.
Like a tattoo or like an additional thing.
Yeah, like a piercing.
Like a piercing, yeah.
It's like, it's really popular now.
So this boy is at a school in the Punjab, and where they are showing you or educating you from a young age on the different parts of the body. And here as well, they're kind of the eye, the nose, the lip, the toe, very much an idea of get to know your own body, the functionality of it, the straightforward look of the body, and kind of introducing kids to the body as it is their own body. And it's on the walls of many, many schools across India now. And it's been in existence for a long time. We have these paper charts which you could buy for a very small amount of money, like a fraction of $1, like 2 rupees or 4 rupees, so that everybody would have the body chart at home to look at the body, and their parents would educate them on it, and across the school walls as well.
As opposed to these images of gyms and in the Dominican Republic, which show, again, the body more as a thing of fashion, as a thing, of showing off, or there's always this masculine guy with huge muscles against again, when they put the women, they're completely different. They're not that muscular. They're more, like closer to what they would depict women for other stuff, like for selling beer and stuff. So that's really weird too. Like here, you have this couple, and they're like, the guy is like, like I don't know, like The Rock or something, or looks kind of like he's scary. He's like huge, and the girl's, she has abs, but not a lot, not that much as the guy. So it's always like that. They always show that those couples with the guy like like a monster, like huge muscles, and the girl like almost any girl you will use anywhere.
And on the right, it's it's wrestling, and it's at a wrestling center, and where they are showing the activity of wrestling. When they show the muscles and biceps, is mostly at a place where you go to develop that. We do have the kind of big muscle men and gold gym now appearing over once globalization has set in many years ago. But that again is never, very seldom do you see that on a painted sign. It goes into the realm of more commercial advertising of the more metallic and glossy glass nature. I like this one a lot, sorry, the one because it's where you feel the body contact amongst the men, it's the closest that you see body contact in India is on these things like wrestling rings, or the depiction of wrestling rings. This one is really fun because it's basically for milk and ghee. And that they're showing that if you drink milk, you will become super strong and you will build muscle and you'll be a strong boy or a strong girl. Here, mostly it's showing a strong boy, but which is what they're saying as a milk advertisement. So it's building strength.
Yeah, I suppose
Building
from a very, like straightforward and practical way. And on the other side is the opposite. The painting is for a money exchange house, and they do, it looks like if we're from a gym, like you just need to show the hand with the money, but they go all the way to depicting, like the big muscles, this macho thing of a guy with money in a place that it's completely unnecessary and makes no sense also.
So this is obviously the idea of ideal beauty in our countries, which is again the kind of, here it seems quite similar in some ways, that the idea of hair straightening and Fair and Lovely and what you do at parlors.
I really like these images because if you will look like from barbershops and hair salons, drawings and advertisements before, they will always show, or mostly show, white people, straight hair, blonde people, blue eyes, mustaches. And now I think it's changing, and I think it's good. Like, I guess it's because like Dominican barbershops are really famous now. With they go along with fashion and music, and it's getting really popular. So now you see more a depiction of reality, like having those hairstyles with Dominican barbers, the cerquillos and the fades and stuff. It's beginning to be very popular. Like if you saw pictures from 20 years, 15 years, they almost never came out like this. So this one I really like. It shows like shows reality.
And this one shows the mustache guy who's going into the barber shop. But this idea to, for some reason, this kind of, unfortunately, back to original sort of Aryan Dravidian form has kind of seeped into the system. And I think colonization didn't really help in this matter. So this idea is slowly changing, but not really changing in the way that it's changing, I think, in the Dominican Republic. And we hope. And this is also a really good example of it, because the girls who are walking in front of the girl at the back who's depicted is tonally of a different skin color, but at the back they're always showing either pink or yellow and in kind of dress and frocks, and the idea of like bows rather than Indian clothing and bows on top, which is quite different to the reality that is lived, because most people, other than the younger generation now, are wearing like saris or traditional clothing, but the visual imaging is often of much more Western clothing. Even though, I mean, these girls in front are schoolgirls, so they are obviously wearing a dress, but they're always catering to this younger looking teeny person.
And this is another image showing that we're getting closer to that, to depicting more of our reality, accepting braids, dreadlocks, and those like um, other hairstyles, as opposed to what it was before. We showing like darkness, dark skin stuff. This was almost impossible to see before, like 10 years ago. Almost impossible to see, like 1 out of 10.
Mm.
This is another image. This is kind of, it's talking about hair extensions. Again, it uses a black person, not like they used to have before. And we find that to be interesting because some of those hairs come from India, or are advertised as to come from India.
I think they do come from India. It's a huge business. This hair extension business from here to other parts of the world. Hair trade. So on the right, I don't really have to say very much because the one word that is in red is bleach. So it kind of says it all, but it gives you all the things that it offers up. And clearly the light toning, which we are discussing again and again, is part of its part of what's on offer.
Here's like to discuss the notion of nation.
So we always think of nation as all the symbols of our nation, and the flag and the 3 lions and the national animal, national bird, national flower, which is the tiger, the peacock, and the lotus. And this is very often, these are shown up as ways of nationhood and nation symbolism. And this is on a wall, obviously doing the same thing.
Here in the Dominican Republic, you will find the colors of the flag, and every national symbol mostly put everywhere, even in places that shows, like you wouldn't be so proud of what's on the surrounding it, but people do have like this obsession with the symbols. Like you will have the flag, and then on the bottom like a lot of trash, and people will be like, I'm proud of my flag, but trash on the ground. It's really everywhere. Every Dominican brand that has those colors is something that you see in a lot of places. Here again, this is for a school, and it's interesting because there's always, it's obviously the flag, but again, I think this image talks a lot of or notion of progress. Like if you see, the school is in the landscape and it's made of concrete, and it's very, like apart from the rest. It's not really something blended in. It's something that, it's the school and the flag. They're built on concrete. And then on the background, you have this plane. And I guess this image talks about a lot of this notion of progress as of being, things that you can build, concrete, buildings, and material things mostly.
And we found it interesting that the color palette and the location are similar to the schools in India, where they're showing concrete buildings again. And this idea that if you go to school, if you're a good boy, if you progress. If you want to progress, you need to go to school to study in a formalized concrete school building. And this boy's mother is obviously taking him to school to make him a good, upright citizen and build the nation of young men. And very often you see at these schools, you used to see a lot more boys than girls. Now you're seeing a mix of both. There was a time when families would send the boys to school and not the girls if they could afford to send only one child. And that luckily has actually changed now. So you see a lot of girls going to school in the depiction of that on the walls and gates of the school.
Here is one of Duarte. It's actually at a school, and it's been vandalized, like not showing a lot of respect to that image. And I found it really, and it stayed there for a while. Like being on a school wall, it was, I find it kind of, like interesting that, and how they, like took off his eyes.
And we have Gandhi on the walls. What's been happening now is that the painting is slowing down here and is getting less and less. And we will discuss that a little bit later. But the state has sort of taken over as the patron of the dwindling signage painters. And this one of Gandhi and the boy on the left, which is called a Swachh Bharat, which is Clean India campaign, is the guy collecting trash and putting it into trash bins next to Gandhi, which is obviously the sign of India and nationhood, even though Gandhi exists visually in a lot of places, both in terms of statues and in terms of now across painting walls.
And now for religion.
So on the god is Ganesh and the elephant god in India, and most gods have a vehicle, and for Ganesh it's the rat. We have obviously lots of different religions, from Hinduism to Islam, Christianity, Sikhism, Zoroastrianism, prevalent in India. So we're going to show you images from different religions and also different aspects of gods that are here, from the creator to the preserver to the destroyer in Hinduism. So we have multi god imaging in India. And Ganesh is always very well fed. He looks very happy and content and prosperous, and is considered, really is the bringer of a lot of happiness. And so Ganesh is always seen mostly in a happy form.
And on the other side, we have San Miguel, or San Miguel Arcángel, which is an image you'll find in mostly Santeria-related shops. Like it could be a Botánica, which is a Santeria shop, or it could be like a place where you go to consult with one of those of their priests or something. And it's something that it's all over the island, that you will find it everywhere, this image of San Miguel.
The same kind of image.
Yeah, it's always depicted in that way.
And Ganesh is depicted in, obviously, as an elephant god with the same vehicle, but depicted, and often with laddus, which are these round sweet meats, but very often in many different ways you see, and many color tone palettes you see Ganesh.
This is actually taken, this image of Jesus is taken not from a religiously related place, but from a cafeteria. And I really like the way he's depicted. It's almost funny. You kind of don't really know if it's on purpose or not, but it really makes me laugh. It's one of those funny images you find.
And this image is from a roundabout, actually, on the street. It's not even either in a church as well. It's from a public wall roundabout that you would cross very often. And it was like a four-sided pillar cross type thing. And it had four different images that were very similar to each other, showing with a very small, maybe just a tiny eye difference, but pretty much the mirror image of each other. So this is a very powerful image of a woman goddess, and of a goddess, and she's shown across always on the tiger as a vehicle, with the same carrying the same things, the same flower, and always shown very strong, and sometimes shown very gentle, and sometimes shown very fiercely. And if you have this vehicle and a goddess, you always know who the goddess is, even if it's just the vehicle and the goddess. So it's very clear in India in who is riding which vehicle, animal vehicle.
And the image on the right is of again in one of those Santeria shops, and it's really interesting because obviously it's a black Virgin Mary and child, a black Madonna, and as opposed to the Catholic image of the Virgin Mary, which is Virgen de la Altagracia, the patron of the Dominican Republic. It's a way, like, it's really nice to see how the kind of the same image but different. The white and the black Virgin Mary appear in different places and on different religions, and also the play with the same color palette here with the orange and green.
So here you have Shiva the Destroyer, always with a serpent and a trishul, very often shown in darker tones. When you see him sitting or standing, but again, very, very identifiable with the dreadlocks and the snake. Wherever you see Shiva, you again know immediately what he will represent through what is surrounding the animals and the objects that surround each god. And
here,
his hand up.
Yeah, and here the image on the left is for a Catholic school, and it's like a cross between two images, because it's that familiar image of a school with a kid with his raised hand and a book in front, but then just, like, to make it clear, they did the Bible as Bible-like as they could, and then if that's not enough, they add the Christ loves you on his uniform, which is kind of funny too. This is another Santeria image with the woman with the snake. And this is actually, and you will see on the next image too, on a Santeria, one of those places that you go to consult, not a shop, like a place where you can go and consult with somebody.
And this is absolutely explicit what we're trying to say here. And I can't remember very well now where I saw this image, but I remember that there was a series of very beautiful depictions of quite detailed depictions on the wall on an outside wall, I think, but with many different renditions of this scene of the Adam and Eve apple scene.
this is the same shop as so the guy here is Rafael, and this image is, to speak of his power and to bring fear to the people who go and visit. And it says, if you don't respect Raphael, you will have a problem. It shows Raphael with this 7-headed snake, and I like the way it's painted on a wall that has bolts, and the bolts like horns on his forehead. So it's really an amazing image.
This writing is inside the walls of, in the precinct of a dargah and a mosque area. And I wanted to introduce the different lettering that exists on our walls. They're multi, we couldn't introduce every one of them, but just to look at also the graphic form in a religious setting, which obviously is indicative of a religious text.
This is typography, which is actually where I started this interest in the vernacular graphics. In typography, you will find like a lot of influences, and that's something that I really like. This style, for instance, is done by a Haitian. It has like a Haitian reference to it sometimes in the drawings, the decorations, and it's really nice how they use different typography for every different name or phrase, and it's something that you will find very much in the Dominican Republic, like applying different typography on the same sign, but to different words, or to, for the name, one typography, for the description, another one, and it's really nicely done. It's something that you would think when I started documenting it, I thought it will go away, but it's actually still there. Like, a lot of people practice it, and it's really good to see that they don't use the computer.
So in this one, the payal is obviously a kind of westernized, influenced typography in India, where it's showing it's what it imagines is like the curvy. We don't really, the painters are not been really discussing fonts. The only fonts that they discuss now are things like Arial and Helvetica, but for the most part, it was always something that had been seen. It wasn't font related. It was the key was, does it look Western? Does it look Indian? Is it taken from a typographic book, or is it taken from how much shading is there? How much curviness is there? That is always the discussion amongst them. What is the color palette? Now here, if you look, it's kind of a mix, because on the left-hand corner, they have this kind of slightly swastika symbol, which is symbol used very often in shops here. It goes to the colonial, and then it goes to the very basic where they write the address. So this one is actually funny, because it's for a food dhaba or a food roadside restaurant, and it shows this very strong tiger, but it's for a vegetarian restaurant. And the idea of this radially taking off from the center is very often influenced from truck painting in India. And this kind of radial, many layering, sort of double radial coloring, and on where it says Kamlesh Dhaba on top in the reds and oranges, this two-tone fonting to give it perspective and depth and design. is used as a, not so much on walls as it is on trucks and auto rickshaws and rickshaws, on mostly on transportation vehicles.
And the one on the right shows obviously a reference to American pop culture, to those 80s new wave graphics on the typography, on the color palette. And I really like the way they use the cinder blocks on the wall to build the pattern with the pink and the aqua. I think that's really nice, and it comes from it surely comes from that, from 80s new wave graphics and pop graphics. As opposed to this image on the left, which is for a Haitian tap tap on the border. And I really like the way they do the decoration and typography. I really like, in contrast with Dominican public transport, which always have, like messages, like competing between drivers and stuff. These always have like positive messages, like "Thank you, mother," or "Be well," or stuff like that's really positive. But I really like the decoration, and you can see the influence on signs, like on the first photograph, on this type of decoration and typography.
So this one is pretty much to show you how to welcome Swagat. Again, the most important thing is the way that the W comes up and the E comes up. It's very vehicular, all of these images that they are putting across shops. When you see it, you think of the way that you see perspective on the road. And this particular one is also on a vehicle. But it's very much the kind of way that vehicles are showing their lettering, the outer highlights or the frameworking of it, basically the outlining of it.
In those public transportations like tap taps and even also in Dominican buses, people put a lot of work and a lot of attention, because they're competing again for people to go on them. So the better they look, the more they will attract people. So that's why they do that. They spend like a lot of money and a lot of time doing those signs and painting those vehicles.
And here, I think it's also because they spend most of their time on the road, because many of these vehicles are intercity and they are driving across and they are almost not at home. So their vehicle is really their home here. And most of the truck owners or truck drivers and truck owners decorate their vehicles because they feel that this is sort of messaging. This is kind of where they spend maybe 10 months of the 12 months on these vehicles. They sometimes only go home to sleep for a night or two and then start again. This is a fun one of a bar by a beachside. And I thought it's kind of interesting because they have all these names like Sweetie Bar, which means nothing, but is obviously one of these bars that you want to attract people to come into. And you can tell in this particular bar, they've also tried to show a little bit the flag colors. It looks like it's a bit patriotic as well, because they brought in the orange and the green and the white. So there is Sweetie on one hand, and then there's the Indian flag colors like punctured into this sign.
And the one on the right is from Lola Jackson. This is a betting place, a sports betting place. And it's really interesting because I started noticing his work in a couple of neighborhoods on the north of Santo Domingo. and they were in cafeterias, they were in hair salons. But then he started working for these guys on these bedding places, and it got so popular because they got so spread out that you can see them all over the country. And a couple of months ago, there was a picture from Haiti, and one of those bedding places there look exactly like this. They're done in this style, and it also comes from that. He has like an unique style. He's kept it for more than 20 years, and it's influenced again by American pop culture, from comics, from even skateboard and surfing brands from the 80s and the 90s. That's where we get the colors, and it's really interesting. And it keeps going. Like, he's still doing the same thing. It's like just his style. Like, if you ask him to do something, that's what you want, and that's what he'll do.
What I find really interesting is that here you sometimes meet the painter, and sometimes you meet the painter artist painter, and mostly you don't. Lots of them are anonymous and they don't even have their signature. It's getting more and more popular to have your name on it, whereas in your case, Maurice, you know almost all of them. In my case, I know many that I've worked with and tracked down, but many of them are just have painted it and let it be. So you never know, except if you start following their style. You understand where they are, and they are very often regional. Whereas there, I think they are already kind of stars.
This guy is famous here, and even between painters, like, I talked to a guy the other day. I said, "No, I know Lola Jackson." He was like, "What? Do you know Lola Jackson for real? Where have you seen him?" He's kind of a legend here. He's everywhere. He works in the whole country. Probably one of the few guys that gets hired to do stuff all over the country.
By individuals and by advertising, by companies, all of that.
Mostly from those bancas, because he's created this style. This is like the style for those places, and there's like a lot of them. Like, you're not a banca if you don't look like that. Now they're starting to do them with digital, and they look boring. They don't look like this.
Yeah. They're like Lola Jackson reproductions.
They started doing with neon signs, copying the color and putting the word banca with neon signs on those colors. One thing that we thought was really important of this thing with vernacular graphics is change, because these are things painted on a wall, so they have to stand the test of time. They're ephemeral. There's something that can be worked on top of. So it's really also to see how technology is changing this environment. On this image, this is in Puerto Plata. I like to go visit as much as I can those places to see if some of the signs or some of the works stay there. So in this case, this is outside of a house. This is like a wall for a house, and it's fun to see how it gets redone. Like, you see the dolphin repainted, the kid lost an arm. I like to see how these things change with time. The waves were painted again, the sky was painted again because it needs to be repainted.
For me as well, it's really interesting to go back to a place. And this one is maybe 10 years later. I kind of go back multiple times, but I felt that it's one of the really sad parts of what is happening in India is that the sign artist, sign painter is slowly losing work. They are actually becoming ATM machine operators and drivers, and very few of them are living off the painting itself anymore. So if there's an area that had 10, there are probably 1 or 2 now, because for a while now they brought in these kind of vinyl machines and light boxes, and everyone thought that that's a kind of more modern way to go. It was initially a much more expensive way to go, and now it's become a cheaper way to go to do vinyl. The box shows modernity. And so the painter is getting less and less patronized, except by more and more by the state now. So like that Gandhi image that we saw earlier, or at schools, is where the painters are being used, and therefore they are actually having to draw what the state wants them to draw. Or now during COVID, a lot of the COVID advertising, or the metro, when the metro was being built, the metro advertising was being done by state sponsorship. So here is a local tailor who had this wonderful sign with and he was showing his jacket and his trousers. And then you come to the sign where he's now doing a much more generic rendition of a man in a suit, which you could see, or a jacket anywhere. And so we're kind of in the tragedy of change of this.
This is also one of my favorites. There's this place is the owner sold ice cream, and then he had like a pool table on the side, like a pool place, but the pool business didn't take off, so he shut it down, and they repurposed the sign from the pool to the ice cream thing. Like if you notice, he took the cue and put an ice cream spoon, a serving spoon. He gave her a cup. The girl with the wine glass, he was still working on it. And then if you notice, the girl on the left shows her panties on the pool, and with the ice cream shop, he just, painted, he put a dress on it. So it's really amazing how we repurpose the same sign by the same artist, done by the same artist.
This is a street food stall in the old city. And about 10 years ago, there was a stall which just had its name and a little bit of a visual graphic of the chart, which is the street food that they serve. Very much kind of a functional sign. It's a really popular place where people come from all across the city to eat. It's kind of like a little bit of yogurt, a little bit of chickpea, a little bit of tamarind chutney mixed in together to make a delicious street chaat. And on the right, because of the internet and the idea of disposable income and the idea of the chef coming in, this very homegrown street food stall has now become, the chart corner is showing a chef to give the endorsement of what they think that like the chef is creating the food and the chef is endorsing the food, rather than just the local guy who was making the food. And so it's also shows very well this change on the changing times that exist in the rendering of the signage.
This is again revisiting places. This sign is painted on the same place as the first photographs of food we saw. So then first it was a cafeteria, and the guy painted the food, the fish soup, the rice and beans plate. Then it got made into a like a bar. So he painted a couple dancing, and then it got rented by a guy who was doing a vegetable and fruit market. But the guy couldn't erase the sign. He said, I talked to him and he said, I don't know what they painted this with, but I applied like 7 layers of paint and it doesn't go away. So I gave him the number of the painter and said, just call him and he'll do something for you. And I guess he called him, but it's amazing. The guy said he spent a lot of money on paint and it still doesn't go away, like this and dancing stuff. And he's selling, like, vegetables there.
So here they obviously haven't even tried to erase the earlier sign. They've just gone and painted over it. And this is on the outskirts of a city where somebody has been commissioned and been given the idea to just go off and paint something. He hasn't bothered to even see what was written before. And he's just gone and overpainted it. And now it's overgrown. And in fact, I have an image of this place, which is like completely overgrown with weed. And then somebody must have gone and cut it down to show what was being said. But it's kind of, there is a sort of disregard as well of, once it's done, it just exists. And then if it disappears, because it is ephemeral in that way, it disappears, it just disappears. It will not come back, or somebody will go and paint over it. And so it's sort of interesting that either it gets grown over or painted over. And here there's been even no attempt to erase what was there earlier.
And here's one of those happy coincidence. This was a tailor shop, and then they put this counter for the electricity, and it goes perfectly like the head of the guy with the suit. So it's like an accountant maybe.
And this is also a tailor shop. And they obviously decided that they needed a phone. And so they basically, before the mobile phones became omnipresent, they obviously decided, okay, we need a phone. And they didn't even bother about positioning it in a way. They just were like, let's overlayer it. We need it here. Let's go to the they said they went to the most convenient spot where they could tailor and talk on the phone and extend the coil and talk at the same time. And so they thought if it had gone, I asked them why they didn't put it a bit lower and not over the collar, or like lower down under the pocket on the side that they have it. And they were like, it wasn't convenient for us to stand and talk and work and talk. And so we just put it at our most convenient spot. So often these things are disregarded. I mean, they are overlayered all the time without any kind of preciousness to them. And that's also the beauty in them very often.
Well, I think those words, Aradhana, sum up well, no, what you're saying. I mean, what you both have been presenting, no, that the beauty of this form of art comes from a lot of coincidences, layering, what Maurice was saying, happy coincidences, and some kind of the fact that it's not perfect, right? That there is, and that's what gives it a very particular touch. I could go on listening to both of you for ages and looking at these images and the pairing that you have done. But beyond that, I think that this dialogue between Aradhana and Maurice might continue, will continue. That's up to them. But I think that it's really interesting, and there is a lot of potential to think of other conversations and other ways of presenting the work. So again, I'm just gonna thank them a lot for this delightful morning for us and night for the Dominican Republic. And I see thanks, good night, and good morning. So someone else is thank you. So thank you very much, and see you very, very soon. And thanks to all the participants and all the people that have added with their comments and questions. And see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Maurice and David and Anna. Ciao.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.
However.